Welcome back to Inspirathon 2023. We are now going to go to two speakers. I'm going to introduce the first speaker, who will then introduce the other speaker, and we'll have two speakers on here very shortly. Our next guest is Anna Jacklin. So she's the final speaker for Australasia, and she is the Vice President APAC Real Estate Operations at Gartner. Many organisations are looking for ways to motivate our people to come back. With the people looking for reasons not to. I think that's a very, very good point. We know at the moment that tussle and that tension between coming back to work is absolutely on. So Anna's talk today, The Power of Perspective, will share how to find the fulcrum that provides balance between that tipping point. At Gartner, it's always been about conversation and inclusion. Gartner began using behavioural psychologists on projects about 10 years ago. So understands the relevance of having open, collaborative conversations with key stakeholders and associates to ascertain any gaps in thinking expectations. Bridging these gaps helps roll into data-driven decisions, which will continue to provide key learning strategies. I'm looking forward to hearing more. I'm looking forward to Anna introducing Kristina also, who will be joining us in this session.
Hi. So I always have fun introducing Kristina. So Kristina and I have been working together for, makes me feel old, but about 16 years. So Kristina joined me for I think the first project was somewhere in India. So we do not just Australia, but we do all of Asia and India. So I always call Kristina a behavioural scientist instead of psychologist, which kind of gives us a bit of a giggle. After I still managed to do it after probably 300 or 400 interviews that we've done over the years. So Kristina and myself started a partnership about 16 years ago. We do a strategy piece for our projects prior to kicking them off, which we'll go into a little bit later on. But I see Kristina as my key right-hand woman who kicks our projects off with me to ensure that we deliver the space. So, Kristina, I'll let you just do a little quick introduction of yourself, and
Sure.
then we'll kick off.
Probably doesn't need much more than that, but yeah, I am a behavioural psychologist, been working with Anna for ages. We actually do global projects, as she said. And one of the interesting things is having this conversation, we thought we'd do something a little bit different in that Anna and I would basically have a conversation about the things that we do in a project to make them successful. And we know they've been successful because we won the inaugural Inspiring Workplaces Award for Australasia this year, which was a huge moment for us and for Anna and the space that we created, and especially for the associates. Because one of the things that Anna's facing now is a Rolls-Royce problem where people are starting to come back into the workspace in droves because it's a destination of choice. So it's wonderful to not have enough space rather than to have too much and be able to swing a cat. So what we thought we'd do is I'm going to ask Anna a couple of questions, pointed. She's probably heard it all before because she's heard me, as she said, ask 400, 500 different people over the last 3 or 4 years what motivates them to come back into the office. It's not a COVID thing. It's not a post-COVID thing. It's always been even if they have to come back, what are we getting them to do inside the space that makes them want to be there as a part of a collaborative team that's productive? So, Anna, you recently won, not to steal your thunder, you recently won the IW award in Australasia, #1, with some really stiff competition. How did that make you feel when you won that award?
And apologies, I'm in Boston at the moment, and because we've taken over global projects. So if I'm a little bit tired, you can see my wrinkles. It's because of lack of sleep. So I've done Toronto, Dallas, Fort Myers, Boston, and then heading off to New York. So apologies if I skip any words, etc. So why was I proud about? So it's achieving the award. It was not just for this project. It was I feel like it's 20 years of recognition of all the learnt knowledge and all of the learnt lessons and all of the pre-learning that we've done to get to this stage. So it was a huge achievement. I feel like it was representation of 20 years of working in the industry and building a very, very strong team and doing all the due diligence at the start of the project. So I was over the moon, very proud and extremely excited to receive it.
Awesome. Now all we have to do is back it up again for next year. So let me ask, what steps do you take? Because this is all about stakeholder engagement. What steps do you take initially to make sure that once you've recognised the key stakeholders, how do you give them a voice?
So we do something a little bit different than I think other people do. We do a stakeholder engagement through interviews, through a third party, to make it independent and to ensure that they feel that they're getting a voice. So we always take a step backwards. We do the strategy piece first, even before we go and look for space and look for sites. Excuse me. So we do interviews. So we did a large project in interview, and we interviewed 65 stakeholders to ensure that we could get, and not just at senior levels, we do it at multiple levels. So we tend to do a senior level, mid-level, and then an associate level. And it's amazing the different perspectives of each of the levels and how we can then, from all of those different levels, build the requirements. So I don't start a project without doing stakeholder engagements. Again, 20 years of learning. If you don't engage the stakeholders at the start, the project is not a success.
Yeah, sure. It makes it harder for them to accept the change if there is any moving forward. You mentioned perspective, and that's what this conversation is about. It's the power of perspective, because you mentioned 65 people being interviewed. That's a lot of people with potentially a lot of different views. So how do you take that wealth of information that you get and actually make sure that you can distill what's blue sky aspirational as opposed to what's really needed to help with productivity?
So we have to break it down into different areas. So as you said, some are wants and some are needs and requirements. So, and again, by doing the different levels, you get the greatest perspective. So I find, please, I hope no managers are listening, I find typically people on the ground who go into, I get the best amount of knowledge. And it could be, I really like attention to detail, and it could be they need a certain cloak closet, but it changes the whole function of the office if you don't, because then you've got coats. But it's interesting, each level has a different perspective of what they need, and you've got to bring it all together. But you can't forget that each of those different groups are going to use the office differently.
So once you've got that information, and it can be quite difficult to distill, I hear you, how do you make sure that you're actually aligning then what you've distilled with the project costs? Because every project comes with a cost impost. So
one of the areas I don't enjoy projects is the lovely word value engineering. I think every person who does projects hates that word, value engineering. So obviously you've got to take the value engineering, and also you can't be afraid if sometimes you do need to evaluate the cost against a business case, and you may have to ask for more money. You may have to say, okay, well, that is the cost, and there is a true business case, and you won't be doing the right thing by shortchanging. So obviously I look at the value, do the value engineering, obviously try to be very creative to ensure that you tick all those wants and wishes. Look, some are not going to ever be obtainable. When I was interviewing India, they had wanted a swimming pool, for example, on the rooftop of our building. That wasn't going to be possible, but what we could break down was we could do a virtual cricket pitch. So you like to well, sometimes you have to say no, but you say no, but how about? So offering options and opportunities as well. So yes, it does, how much it costs is important, but I believe it's showing the value, the true value of the project.
Which is probably why you're getting such, occupancy and utilisation for everyone is the holy grail at the moment. And the fact that you are in India, because I know that project, in Sydney, because I know that one as well, you are getting unheard of occupancy and utilisation rates across any type of business or any channel. You think that the fact that you do all that, balancing what the wants and needs are with the productivity, that is actually creating destinations of choice for people?
I think so. Again, I think it's a whole range of the projects. So we don't just engage with the stakeholders at that one stage and then disappear and then just present the space to them. So obviously, and these stakeholders don't pay for the project. They're not involved in the bottom line. But so we engage them at the start. We then go away and do test fits. We do imaging, 3D images. And quite often they don't understand what they really need, and it's educating them and really showing the benefits of they don't understand design, they don't understand what is actually out there. So it's really educating them about and bringing those ideas. So do the strategy, come back and show them. Quite often there's a few little tweaks. People have some great ideas and you can't just say, well, no, that's the way we're doing it. Listen to them, tweak it, and then go away, build it, and then also post-build, do the reevaluation as well. 3 months out, 6 months out, okay.
Yes. So once they've had time to actually work and play in the space.
Yep.
I want to ask you about communication, and the reason for that is because the only thing that really is ambiguous is communication, it's language. So when a geologist says there's an anomaly, he means there's gold in the ground. When an engineer says there's an anomaly, he thinks the bridge is going to fall down. So they both have very different perspectives. How do you bring all of that information together and focus on making sure that the communication for everyone, not just the people who are interviewed or the people involved in the project, but that everybody has a clear line of communication and understands what's going on?
So we do multiple forms of communication because not everyone reads emails, I'll be honest. So obviously you do stakeholders, you can do them one-on-one, you can do videos, but try to do multiple platforms. So one example is we gave everybody the VCR goggles.
Yes.
Goggles, and we did put newsletters, everything on those. Great hit because it actually got people engaged.
Other methods for that too.
Sorry,
we did drone footage of the build for that.
Yeah, we really like to build the excitement up with every project. So we don't want to just go away, build it. So build the excitement up, especially the last month out. We do competitions, name the meeting rooms. We do videos. We do posters, like, the normal things. But even as many competitions, as many engagement points as you can, because different people engage in different ways. I find food and coffee is a really big incentive for people. We get a barista in and pick the coffee beans, which is pick the snacks. We want everybody to feel that they've gone through the journey, that it's their office and that they're proud that they've been involved with it and it's their home that they're coming into.
Yeah, so it's interesting because the gentleman before us was speaking about culture. So that actually assists in building a culture that is collaborative because people have had a part of the decision-making process the whole way along.
Yep.
I'm just trying to think of another example. So Sydney, you won the award for. What is it about what you did in Sydney that makes it a very different place to work in terms of the look and feel? Because it's not a typical, even in this post-COVID world, it's not a typical office space.
No, so we really wanted to take this as an opportunity. It is our first hybrid build. Because obviously during COVID, projects were stopped, you couldn't build. So this was our first big project after COVID that we wanted to design in the thought of hybrid working. So we threw everything out of the box that you would typically design. It was actually I really enjoyed the whole process because there was no rules. And we started from scratch. And that's why we did a lot of interviews to really understand how people were comfortable coming back to work, what they weren't comfortable about, what they wanted to do when they came into office, which was very different than pre-COVID. So we looked at different zoning, and pre-COVID, the workspace was very heavily about the individual's workstation. We went to clean desk across the globe, but we didn't want, and the ratio before COVID was usually 70% workstations, 30% meeting collaboration. Well, we turned that on, went the opposite. So we were, I think, 35% work, and we don't call them workstations, we call them work points. So not every work point is the same, and you basically pick how you want to work when you come in. So we made some of the standard workstations a little bit smaller. We did them 1.4 meters. So we have some workstations, the linear, then we did pinwheels, then we did high bench, we did project tables, and then we did the work pods where you're cocooned, and then the seats. So there's lots of different opportunities. So you can do alone work, you can do project work, or the spin wheel ones are very popular because you get to work in a different setting and style. So people they may not sit in the same seat all day. They really swap around, and it made it feel a little bit more like you were working at home, and it was more comfortable and they felt more at ease. So we did that area different, but then we also did larger collaboration spaces. And again, the collaboration spaces had different functions. So there was booth seats, which are really popular. We did a little mini auditorium with steps, which has been a huge hit, which now we're doing in several offices across the globe. And every space that we did had to have multifunction and multi-purpose and to be able to be transformed. So we went you're in Sydney with the design, with graphics, colors, and working for an American company, I didn't want to feel like you're working in corporate America. So we threw the box out with everything. So lots of color, lots of natural light, lots of great zoning. So we had, as I said, we threw the original rules out, and we did zoning. So we started in the middle where you have your big pantry, cafeteria area. And again, it's multi-purpose. It could be a town hall area. It could be a cafe. It could be a one-on-one meeting spot. And then we moved out. You had auditorium, meeting rooms, offices, then into the workspaces. So we really were careful with the zones, so that one of the feedback that we received and what people were quite concerned about was that, one, they didn't want to sit on top of each other, but they also wanted to have the flexibility to move and space out because they were a little bit concerned about coming into the office. But we've had great success, and now everyone wants to sit on that floor. So now, based on that success, we now need to renovate the other 2 floors because everyone is going to that one floor and not using the other floors.
Yeah, well, it's not a typical workspace.
No.
It's actually beautiful and very functional. So, I've seen it, I've worked in it, and it has almost at the very heart of the space, as you said, there's the kitchen social space. And like we know, everybody gravitates towards the kitchen when you're having a function at home or inviting people over, despite the fact that you've set up everywhere else. Everyone just wants to hang around in the kitchen. So I know you've created that space for everybody on level 3, and you're now doing the other 2 levels, and you're also doing it internationally. So you're doing it in Boston, Toronto, and New York now, which demonstrates the level of success that Gartner has seen within the spaces you've created. What I wanted to ask you is, do you then do at the end, because you mentioned getting everyone's feedback, having everyone on board, communicating properly, do you then create some sort of etiquette or guidelines to help people get across the hump of maybe they used to do it differently in the past, and this is, you have permission to behave in a certain way in the areas that are new, because people are resistant to change.
Yeah, and again, that's a part of the stakeholder engagement and getting a person on like you. We do the behavioural things and again, a part of building up the excitement of moving into the new space is we start to do some of the behavioural things before the space is opened. So education, and it's not about cramming it down people's throats, as we would say, but giving them, have you thought about how you want to work? This is what we're doing. And again, showing the occupational health and safety, or explaining how you can do a meeting room in this type of setting, or what type of catering we can do, or what type of function. So partnering with all those groups. So we do that, but I think I touched on it previously before. This is a new way of working. We're not going to get 100% of the things right at the start. So it's then going back and re-interviewing those stakeholders, asking people on the ground, observing and seeing what works, what would you enhance, what would you do differently, because it's a learning process. And I'm very proud, we probably would have got 85 to 90% right. We'll just make a few little tweaks and continue to do.
And that leads into my next question about lessons learned.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you do as far as lessons learned are concerned?
So it's not just we take lessons learned from all areas of the project, not just how you design it or build it, which is obviously very key, but it's down to, we take all areas. It could be down to cabling, cable management, down AV installation, furniture vendors, fabrics, every part of the project we pull apart, have a look, because as I said, it's 20 years of growing the knowledge. We want to finish a project that's the best in time. The next project has to be the next step up. So we're always wanting the next project to be better, not always bigger, because some will be smaller, but always we want to improve. We don't ever want to go backwards.
Awesome. So let me ask you a final question, because I know we're running short on time. What one piece of actionable advice can you provide to everybody who's listening or watching, so that they can do something that can help them achieve the same level of success that you did by winning the IW award for Australasia?
My award. Well, I don't call it my award. I call it my team's award.
It's not like you haven't won lots of awards, because you have, but this one was special. So what can someone do to get to that?
So there is not just one thing. I do believe stakeholder engagement is the key. Without the stakeholder engagement, you could build anything and it can look pretty, but is it serviceable? Is it functional? So stakeholder engagement, bringing people along for the journey and building what is actually needed and required. And we can all build beautiful spaces, but you've got to make it functional and practical. So you've got to listen. You've got to sometimes put your pride to the side, and then listen. That would be listen to your stakeholders and understand what they need and what you can offer them, and building the trust that they can trust you to deliver what they need as well.
Awesome. Okay, so I think that in summing all of that up, the whole measure twice, cut once analogy is something that we always subscribe to, because it's much better to do the painful part first up front and get everybody's input, and then distill what is actually really important for the overall look and feel, function and productivity of the people in it, and then into how that flows project by project and how you can always improve by listening and learning.
Yes. Always. There's always room for improvement, and to always doing that step above and beyond. We're always looking for that next creative thing.
Excellent. Can't wait to work on the next one.
We've got a few.
I know. And the award next year for IW 2024. Here we come.
Watch out, everybody.
Thanks, Anna.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for joining us and being part of the show. Fascinating, very interesting, and it's great that we've had a really practical conversation here. You know, we've been spending so much time in concept, and the conversation you had really is about how it comes to life, what things are most important to consider as you get about getting it done. Thanks so much.
Pleasure.